Good evening, everybody. This is Darius Assemi, your host at Unfiltered, coming to you live from Fresno, California, along with my co-host, Bill McEwen, head of news, executive vice president of news for United States of America. I'm sorry, for GB Wire. Uh, welcome, Bill, and our audience. We have a great round robin of all events, local and national, to bring to you tonight. And don't forget to comment with any questions you have um, on our Facebook. I don't know if I don't see the comments on that come through YouTube channel. Okay, let's fire up the great weather that's in front of us. 60s, almost into 70s. By the weekend, it should be a fantastic weekend. Highs in the high 60s, lows in the 40s. Nice sunny weekend. Can't ask for more. And then, but however, we want to warn drivers to slow down in the fog. Got foggy mornings, and CHP wants drivers to be extra cautious, so we avoid accidents like this one on the screen. We have several poll results, and some of these polls will continue, and Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, but here we go. The first one. Do you support the tactics ICE is using in Minneapolis? Over 50% said ICE is no. ICE is criminally killing Americans. 36% said yes. We need to rid America of all illegal immigrants. That number, is it 11 million or is it 20 million? It's somewhere between 11 and 20 million folks that we need to be mindful are going to get deported. 10 to 11 million of those folks, and unfortunately, the data is not good. We don't have good data on folks that are here illegally. Some of those folks have been here over a decade or two, been paying taxes, Social Security taxes, working in the fields, construction sites, etc., but no pathway to citizenship or residency, or even temporary residency, unfortunately. What do you think of, Bill, any comments on that, by the way?
Just, Darius, about the number. Yes, it's very hard to calculate. And we do know that self-deportations have been a big part of the exodus now under President Trump. And, you can hypothesize that some of the reasons for these shock and awe tactics are they wanted people to self-deport. So be interesting to see what the final numbers are, when Trump finishes his second term in the White House.
Thank you, Bill. What do you think about ICE's efforts to deport illegal immigrants? Okay, similar numbers, about right. So almost half of the respondents on our Facebook poll said ICE's efforts to deport illegal immigrants is about right. Another ICE poll, actions in the United States and wars escalating around the world. No, actually, it's not an ICE poll. Would you spend money on big ticket items, knowing all the, I don't want to use the word chaos around the world, but instability around the world, especially in the Middle East, lots of wars, potentially more wars, more money spent on war, on the war effort. Would you spend more money on big ticket items, cars, homes, boats, etc., and much less willing, which was 62.5% of folks, followed by no, I don't care, no change. 29% of you said doesn't matter what the wars are outside, or instability, or ICE raids, or ICE actions. I'm going to continue to spend as I have been. Do you support President Trump's proposal to increase U.S. military spending by more than 50% to 1.5 trillion for 2027? Almost about a supermajority of you said no, America has other problems that need fixing. And the last one, do you support U.S. military intervention in Iran? Barely over half said no. When he was elected, President Trump said he would keep our troops home. Unknown if troops are going to be involved, but with that, let's go into our next slide. Iran signals willingness to negotiate nuclear deal amid U.S. tensions. There may be a meeting in Turkey, although Iran said that they were going to change the venue or the location. They want to negotiate, and I think really to bring some stability to the area, Iran needs to talk to the president directly, Iranian president, or at least folks from the administration, and come to some kind of a resolution. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos in that part of the world. Can United States take out all of Iran's missile silos, capability to inflict, I don't want to use the word war, but demolish some of the oil refineries in the region, whether it's United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, which is, basically 50 to 100 miles away across the Persian Gulf, and have soaring gas prices, so on and so forth. So that's the question. Bill, you had a comment on this?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't have great instability in Iran, big uprising, then the rest of the world criticizing Iran when they struck very hard against their protesters, killing thousands. President Trump involves himself in this. They send their leading face out there to CNN for a big Sunday interview. He sounds real reasonable. Yes, we want to get this done. And then, today we get a story. Iran demands changes in venue and scope of talks with US. I mean, how many times have we seen this play? And they're in a predicament, but they're never going to admit that publicly. They always want to give the message to their own people that they're in power. Look how ridiculous that is on the face of it. And that's why it's so hard to deal with Iran. They make a ton of promises, they never keep them. They stab their so-called allies in the back. Very, very difficult. And, you talk about leadership change in Iran, there has to be a total culture change in whoever's leading the government. I don't care if it's the next religious figure or grandson of the Shah or someone that comes up from the people. Has to be a total culture change. The world's passing Iran by. They act like this is the 1850s when it comes to world events.
Well, these guys have taken a very progressive country in the 70s back, 50 to 80 years into the dark ages. They've depleted the country's resources. They've, mismanaged its water. Iran has shortage of electricity and water. One of the richest oil-producing nations has shortage of electricity. So these guys have really screwed up. The Ayatollahs have the management of that country. The challenge with coming to terms, they're unstable, and I'm sure folks in the CIA and Mossad are going, how unstable are these guys? And they probably know really well. They couldn't get to Khamenei and the last go around in mid-June. The Israelis couldn't for some reason, or they didn't want to. And unfortunately, the attacks on Iran came, on the weekend that United States was supposed to have negotiations with Iran. And they were expecting that meeting on the weekend, and then the bombings happened Friday into Iran's nuclear. So it's the whole thing is unstable. And, President Trump is very smart. He shows one hand, but he really plays another one. So this is, by the way, the art of negotiations in an international arena where there's lots of, I don't want to say camouflage or deceit, but it's art of making the deal. President Trump understands it. He may tell you one thing and do something completely opposite. Some of the conversation in the Iranian circles is that when President Trump said, we're going to send a whole fleet of ships and aircraft carriers to the area, it was to really flush out Iranians to see how they will move their missiles around, missile batteries. Are they going to move money out of the country? Who's hiding where? So a lot more complicated. Whatever the deal is, we won't know. It's going to happen quietly with a few folks, power brokers, and I'm sure Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to be smack in the middle of that conversation on what should shape up. So whatever we see in the public, some of the deal was cooked and made between China, Russia, Iran, and United States and Israel. China and Russia made a pact with Iran that was signed over the weekend. So this is, the substantially above my pay grade on figuring out what is the deal to be made. And I'm not going to be naive about, hey, here's what Iran said, and now they want to change the venue. The deals are going to be made between China, Russia, United States, and Israel, and to some extent Iran, on what's going to happen to Iran. And that's just a reality. You're the biggest most powerful country in the world, United States, our country, and then you have to deal with Russia, and you have to deal with Chinese military might and economic might, and of course Israel, which plays a big role in the Middle East and U.S. foreign policy in that part of the world. Okay,
And Darius,
yeah,
China and Russia, they need Iran to survive in some form,
yeah.
survive and maintain their alliance because
China,
of oil.
yeah, China mainly, not Russia, but China, yes, correct. So it's really complicated. Again, there is a segment we did last week. The whole clip, 1 hour clip, is on GB Wire by Trita Parsi. Yes, three guests beautifully articulate the options Iran had or has, and the United States should hopefully be looking at. And that's now that goes back to January 12th, which is 3 weeks ago, but it feels like decades ago, and how fast things are moving in the Middle East. Okay, let's move on. Chuck Schumer uh, made a comment about the fight for aid to Israel as his key role as the Trump administration approves a $7 billion arms sales to Israel. And in the last week or two, I've seen on social media, on YouTube, a lot of Democrat members of the House and Senate, try to argue with the president on their own, on their monotones. What is it?
Floor speeches.
On their floor speeches and outside of Congress, going after the president about how, his tactics are not following the U.S. Constitution. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they are aggressively going after the Trump administration and President Trump himself. But really, at the end of the day, they're voting for all the bills. So Democrats are just bending the knee and following the president on what he wants done, especially Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, that says, hey, whatever we got to do, he's signing off on all the bills because I'm not sure about this, Bill. Maybe you can opine on this. Are the bills attached, like funding ICE and funding Department of Homeland Security, are they connected to the bill that sends money to Israel? Do you know that, Bill?
No,
No.
I
Okay.
don't know that.
Okay.
I mean, the funding stream was, the latest round was divided up into 7, and they have not yet voted on the military budget that would take it from 1 trillion to 1.5 trillion. That is for the 2027 budget cycle.
Got it.
So there'll be a big fight ahead on that.
Okay.
And based on what you said, Darius, Democrats will vote for it.
That's what it looks like. The president, they're all bending a knee to the president as really the supreme leader. I mean, not the supreme leader, the president of our country. That's
Boy, that was a Freudian slip.
that was a Freudian slip. Uh, let's bring slide 19. Bill, uh, illegal. This article, a legal tool for holding ICE agents accountable, goes back to the 1987 law review article by young law professor named Akil Reed Amar. Are you familiar with this, Bill?
Yes, yeah, Darius.
Okay.
So, usually New York Times headlines are pretty boring. In this case, it was actually clickbait because it says, a legal tool is there for holding ICE agents accountable, and it's actually, it might be there. I mean, that's the thread of it, and it stems from he was then a young law professor named Akil Reed Amar, and he wrote an article that has proven to be very influential. I think it was 94 pages long. It covered a bunch of topics. It's actually been cited in 7 Supreme Court decisions. When asked why he wrote this 94-page article, he said, well, I was 27 at the time I was trying to get tenure. So go back today, 39 years later, he's a wise man at this point. Um, and basically what this says, his premise was that state legislatures can authorize lawsuits against federal officials for violating the Constitution. And if that's right, such state laws could close an odd gap in federal law that, broadly speaking, allows suits against state and local officials like police officers. We have that in California, but not against federal ones like ICE agents. And there's a case going way back when. Here's the problem. The court said, yeah, states can sue, the federal government. Or in this case, officers. However, it also said Congress has to authorize such a law. And so Congress has never authorized it. So it's just out there, this slender thread dangling out there. And you have to be pretty savvy in the law and a reader of law journals really to make it all the way through the article.
Thank, thank you, Bill, for that explanation on a somewhat complicated topic. Okay, this is a poll. Whose poll was this? I'm trying to track this. It was a New York Times poll. At least it was published on New York Times.
So, Darius, that was a summary of polls. I believe one was from Pew, one was from Ipsos. And so, yeah, it just goes over the current situation with ICE. It breaks, what the support is by Democrats, by Republicans, and the like. But as someone who reads a lot of these polls, seems like in the past few days, there's been more support for these aggressive actions, more support for Trump. And that was reflected in our very own GV Wire poll.
No, exactly. And this is the article that I think Bill was referring to. There you go. On GV Wire, it's published originally by New York Times. And you can read that article on GV Wire. What about Mr. Epstein? Let's put up slide 20. Government published dozens of nude photos in the Epstein files. Are they actually available for people to check out?
So
Finally?
when Darius went, oh, the files are, but these nude photos were in the 3 million pages of new releases, and the government had delayed it, saying they were doing all the redactions. But the Trump administration, when it comes to actually carrying out things, it's pretty much amateur hour. And so these nude photos went out there. And the New York Times was going through the documents. The Times actually notified the Trump administration. that they were in there. And, after they confirmed they were real, Times also reached out for some of the women that were in the photos. Of course, they were quite upset about it. And Trump administration did fix this after being notified by the New York Times.
Got it. Thank you, Bill. Now, I want to put this slide 21 up. If Jeffrey Epstein was a Muslim, and the whole world would be coming down on Islam and Muslims. I mean, I know we already have a lot of that in the West, but there would be no end to connecting him and making him the face of Islam and the face of so many Muslims, which is almost 2 billion of us across the world. Let's bring back slide 16. One of the federal government employees unions, American Federation of Government Employees, largest federal employee union, is asking for Ms. Noam and Mr. Miller's resignation. Anything on that, Bill?
Well, just basically, Alex Preddy was a member of this union. And,
Okay.
they held a memorial for him, and they followed up with that, calling for the resignations of Noam and Miller. And it's based on the words they said, how they slandered Alex Preddy, calling him a domestic terrorist and those kinds of things, when, that wasn't the case. And all of America has seen that it wasn't the case.
Got it. Thank you, Bill. And then how the president appears in the Epstein files. New York Times has through some kind of a proprietary search tool, identified more than 5,300 files containing more than 38,000 references to our president. And then CBS News expected to sever ties with the contributor Peter Attia over Epstein links. Those of you who are not familiar with Peter Attia, he's got a large following, health tips, how to live longer, stay healthier, eat better. Sorry to see that. And then bringing it closer to the state, and here's Central California. Let's put up slide 24. Is the personal political 5 takeaways from Gavin Newsom new book. What are the, Bill? This is one of your articles.
So not my article, but I did edit it and put it up. And Gavin Newsom's new book will be out later this month. There's been copies released to media outlets that have been reviewing it. The local connection is the memoir called Young Man in a Hurry. Was written by Mark Arax of Fresno. He's the ghostwriter on this. And it's been a long project for Mark. Book was originally supposed to come out a couple of years ago. Publisher had other ideas on what would be the best news peg, as we say, for this, or the best moment to time it. And so now it's coming out as Governor Newsom all but makes official his intention to run for the presidency in 2028. And, some people have given it great reviews. Other people have said not so much. And the governor's made himself available to promote the book. I've been told 60,000 copies already ordered. I imagine quite a few of those ordered by Democrats in California or the California Democratic Party. When politicians publish books, there's a built-in sales base because PACs will, buy 2,000, 3,000, that kind of thing. So basically, if you want to know about what's in the book, I mean, There's a lot of talk about how Newsom's approach to handling Trump changed. Early on, um, Newsom was kind of like, well, we have to put up with all the bluster and everything, but that's how we'll keep funds flowing to California. He would even flatter President Trump on occasion because he was told that's the playbook. But as we all know, recently now, he's turned into the Democratic version of Trump, and he tweets in all caps and does all kinds of silliness. And it has grown Newsom's brand nationally. He is like the attack dog against Trump. So he covers that. He also reflects on, and this is the thing that people want, they always like scandal. He covers his first marriage, which was to Kimberly Guilfoyle. She later became Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend. So, yeah, you go from a Newsom to a Trump. And, he says early on it was a marriage of two ambitious climbers. And as it went on, both just went in different directions. So there's that segment of the book. The main thrust is talking about his childhood. And yes, he was friends with the Gettys. And yes, his dad was a judge, not just a regular local judge, but a very powerful judge. He had connections, deep political connections. And he was one of the closest friends and advisors to Gordon Getty. And if you think back to 1983, Forbes does Who's the Richest Man in America? Well, Elon Musk wasn't, on the chart then. It was Gordon Getty. So his dad was advisor and friends to Gordon Getty. But his dad split from his mom. And so Newsom and his sister were raised by his mom, who worked multiple jobs to keep the food on the table, clothes on their back. That was the everyday living, according to the memoir. And then interspersed with that is Gavin's asked to go along with the Gettys. They go photographing polar bears in Canada by helicopter. They go in a hot air balloon over the Serengeti. They spend a week hanging out with the King of Spain. Um, in the memoir, it is written, Newsom was so close to the family that he was mistaken as one of the Getty boys by Jack Nicholson. So, you know, he's a politician. He wants to identify with all the people. Not a lot of people are going to identify with his trips with the Gettys. They will identify with, he was raised by a mom, had to work multiple jobs to keep the food on the table. And, there are other things. So he also reveals, writes about when his wife lost their baby. She became unexpectedly pregnant in 2020 at age 46. This is his wife, Jennifer, and they lost the baby after 9 weeks. So perhaps this is why Governor Newsom is so involved in abortion rights and all those kind of issues, as well as education. So we'll see how many he sells. We'll see if he gets to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and we'll see if Republican strategists pick out a few things in there to use against him down the line.
That was a great analysis, and there you have it, folks. A nice synopsis of what you could expect when you read, if you were to read Governor Newsom's new book, or it's called the memoir. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, it's got the official title is Young Man in a Hurry, a Memoir of Discovery.
Got it. There you have it. Thank you, Bill, for that. FBI Las Vegas raid uncovers biomaterials connected to Reedley Biolab owner. They raided a couple of homes in Las Vegas late last week or early this week. Inside the garage of these two homes, they find all kinds of biological testing equipment and materials similar to those found in Reedley in 2023. They arrested Ori Solomon for improperly handling and disposing of biomaterials, and he was listed as Mr. Solomon has been listed as a custodian for the Zhu property. So they raided the two homes in Las Vegas late last week or earlier this week. And then, of course, the next story from GB Wire, U.S. Representative member of the House, Jim Costa and David Valadao, and Kevin Kiley reintroduced a new bill to empower federal authorities to go after biological laboratories.
Okay. So Darius, the big deal here is they found it in Vegas. FBI there is immediately. They have all kinds of equipment. They have all kinds of manpower. They're addressing it in a way, people are not endangered. When it happened in Reedley, my God, it took a local code inspector to find it. There were headlines, then nothing moved, nothing happened. Yeah, Kevin McCarthy, remember, he was on a soapbox about it and trying to make hay out of it. And then it turns out they never did pass the legislation, never did get it through. And so bipartisan effort here to make sure that wherever this is found, there's a response. Now, one thing is clear. If you had biological agents get out in Las Vegas, you're talking about losing tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. You're talking about a much bigger metropolitan area. And also, they have the experience of Reedley, right?
That's
We've been
correct.
through this
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
Now we're going to do it the right way. My final comment on this is, who knows the truth about Zhu? Seriously. I mean, everybody loves to weave a theory about him. He's a Chinese double agent. And then people say, no, he's, his attorney says if he went back to China, his life would be in danger. We don't know if that's true or not. His wife and child got a one-way ticket and went back to China. And, all the places this guy has been, all the companies he has formed, all the intrigue, going back to when he was arrested, then he kind of had some blood on the face and a black eye, and he said he was beaten by the officers and, filed some kind of complaint on that. He's suing the city of Fresno. He is an international man of mystery. And maybe, the next time in federal court, if they ever get to trying him, maybe we'll learn some truth.
Thank you, Bill. Now, with that, how long does a hospital emergency room visit take? We aggregated a story a few days ago. Was it yesterday or over the weekend, Bill? And there's a great chart. I don't know if we have that chart that actually rates all the local hospitals in terms of the number of minutes it takes to get service once you enter the emergency room. Great article, Bill.
So, Darius, this is from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, a nonprofit. And let me explain the chart, because Adventist Health in Bakersfield, average ER visit minutes, 291 minutes. But what does that mean? What that means is not the time it took to be seen by a physician or a nurse, but the time it took to be seen and then receive medical attention. So in other words, you got something serious, you need, to get into a hospital bed, you're looking at a long time there.
Yeah.
on average, and that's just the median. So that means half were above this, half were below this. And I was somewhat surprised because Clovis Community Medical Center, 272 minutes. They were number 3 for the longest. Community Regional, which is the busiest hospital in the valley by a mile, in 2024, they had almost 88,000 emergency room visits.
That's
Think about
incredible.
that.
That's
Uh,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, their average was 241 minutes. So what's the complications here? You know, a lot of times it's medical beds, open medical beds. Other times it's physicians on staff. Then it's just the flow of people through. During flu season, people are using the emergency room like they used to use a regular doctor. We have big accidents, a lot of people coming in needing surgery right away. They're going to go in. People with, the flu or whatever, they're going to wait. So, as part of the story, though, they talk about the steps. They talked, Tim Sheehan talked with the leaders at these hospitals and talk about the steps they're taking to bring this down. And so, Darius, how does that compare in so nationwide, the average duration of the visit was 2 hours and 41 minutes. And in
And we're over 4 hours.
yes, for a lot of the hospitals,
Yeah.
almost 5 hours in
Yeah.
Bakersfield.
Bill, as we're discussing this, I wish we would spend more dollars here in the United States building more ICU. I've been to ICU for myself, for several friends over the last few years. The wait is long, and they have all these gurneys or beds, small and sometimes makeshift beds in the hallways. The rooms are occupied. There's so many folks. Hats off to all the nurses and the technicians and the support staff that work, and the doctors and physicians that work around the clock to provide care in the ICUs. It's a complicated job. I just wish there was more dollars to take care of health care for Americans, and where we could build more hospitals, more ICUs, so that you don't have to wait 4 to 5 hours to have your emergency addressed. But unfortunately, it's not a high priority for state, federal government. We spend a lot more money on other issues, including uh, war efforts. Representative David Valadao voted for Medi-Cal cuts. Will voters hold it against him? What was it, 64% of the folks in his district are recipients of
That's
Medi-Cal,
correct, Darius.
and he
Yep.
voted to well,
Well, he voted for the big beautiful
yeah.
bill which slashed Medicaid funding, which in California is called Medi-Cal. And let's talk about this. He's been up for election 8 times, won 7 times in that district or a version of that district. And incumbency is powerful. Republicans also point out that midterm voters, typically Democrats, don't turn out in big numbers. And also that independent voters do not rate the healthcare question high in polling. Their number one concern is affordability and the economy. So a Republican strategist quoted in this story makes the case that Valadao could prevail. Um, I think a lot of that is, just messaging. I don't know that it's true. I would expect there'll be a huge turnout in this midterm by Democrats. And, at some point, an incumbent wears out their welcome. Now, Valadao did do these symbolic, meaningless votes that made it look like he's trying to get better health care for the people of his district. And he also talks about the Trump's rural health care funding, $50 billion across America. However, his district is only going to get a sliver of that, just a Band-Aid. Band-Aids are better than nothing, but he keeps talking about $50 billion.
Got it. These are tough votes. How much pressure are on these members of Congress, Republican or Democrat, by their party leader or or in this case, president? And was there something else that came in and benefited the district as a result of this? I don't know. I haven't really looked into it.
Darius, you surprised me because about a month ago you were saying, get these guys out if they can't get things fixed.
Well,
And
if
now
they can,
you're
no,
saying they're tough votes.
no,
Well, you know what? You have to make tough votes
you do.
if you want to get things fixed.
If these guys, my biggest point at the time and even now, really, if they can't get things done, especially comprehensive immigration reform, something that is now tearing our country apart. There's so many of you look at the polling, the results, 40, 60, 50, 50. And we see all these horrific videos every night. We gotta get comprehensive immigration reform. I feel like, the government is just cutting your skin or trying to put a band-aid on something where we have a infection, underlying infection that government is just not addressing for a variety of reasons, which we've talked on this program many times, and it's really disturbing. Council member Arias said it on this show, and several other folks, and I'm going to say it too. If you can't get comprehensive immigration reform done, so people know, how do we deal with the labor shortage, talent shortage, investor shortage in our country? If you can't get that done, we keep on. The borders should be closed. We should not have open borders. And that was a mistake. We talked about that as well in the Biden administration. But fix the problem by overhauling the laws and then figure out how do we deal with these people that are here illegally. Do they go in the back of a line? Do they reapply? Anyhow, that was my comment, and that's a tough job to do because there's lots of political pressure on both sides. But if you're an elected representative, you do the right thing for the country. Your constituents will see it and keep you in office. But we're
Okay,
really sick of that.
so Darius, I want to bring up something that I've never heard brought up when we talked about comprehensive immigration reform. We talked about how we were close, didn't get it. We talk about Democrats fundraise off the status quo, Republicans fundraise off the status quo. But think about it. California, Texas, first and second largest in population in the country, or first and third. I mean, they're up there. Then you throw in Arizona, New Mexico, countries that all have states that all have a vested interest in comprehensive immigration reform that works and is fair. Why? Because it's ag country. They have a tremendous need for workers. They're the ones that deal with the brunt of this. Why couldn't those states, all the representatives get together, flex some muscle, and say, no party label on this one. We're all together. We're getting it done.
You're talking, most of us go, that has so much common sense. Why can't we apply common sense in politics in Washington? Unfortunately, common sense and politics most of the time don't go hand in hand. But that's a great idea. Or have become its own South America country.
Well, but no, if Texas and California, the whole delegation agreed on something,
Yeah.
who's going to screw with them?
That's got to be, what
Can
is
you
it,
think of
70, 75, 80 combined members of the House?
Think if they said, and if you don't go with us, we're sitting out everything you need. That takes leadership. That takes a leader in California, a leader in Texas. If California and Texas agree, you're going to get Arizona and New Mexico.
Unfortunately, I mean, those are great thoughts. Unfortunately, there's so many lobbyists with so much money that will start tearing apart if this doesn't align with some much bigger power and money-driven interest. But
Hey,
yeah,
Darius, logic, common sense, it has to win some of the time. It can't be
it.
crushed all the time, or then you'll get a revolt.
Well, I mean, hey, look at all we gotta do is look at Gaza and all the destruction ever since the ceasefire. What is it? At least 500 Gazans killed. Under which regime or religion or culture would we say it's okay to have 2.5 million people occupied, starved, medical aid, food aid deprived? Every common sense tells you we've got to put in peacekeepers, UN peacekeepers, American peacekeepers, and bring some stability to that region. I mean, it's really difficult to watch that our taxpayer dollars going in and not bringing peace and stability to that region. But let's move on. We can talk about that. And one of these Tuesday nights, we're going to dedicate again to the Middle East, and hopefully with the right guest. We have a special guest. I'm hoping he'll join us next Tuesday night to discuss issues of the Middle East. Okay, Bill, education funding. This
Okay,
is
so this was a shock to me. It's an op-ed submitted to GB Wire, and it's from 7 California public school superintendents. Misty Herr, the superintendent of Los Angeles Unified, Long Beach Unified. It's a single op-ed, so they're all writing as one voice, and they talk about fiscal, fiscal challenges that are structural, that are huge. And, they talk about we have declining enrollment. We have declining funding, and yet costs keep going up. And they're talking about inflation in the economy, the cost to have really good special ed programs, on and on. And so there's a pledge in here, and I hope GV Wire unfiltered viewers that are really interested in education will read this op-ed, because these superintendents basically pledge. Are you ready, Darius? It's going to be music to your ears.
okay.
They're pledging to reduce administrative costs. They're pledging to protect educational programs that benefit students. And they are begging the unions to cooperate. They're calling for partnership, not polarization, as they enter negotiations, because they say when it comes to money, the funding's bare. And in the headline, though they don't really go into it in the op-ed, basically they're saying California needs to find a new way to fund schools. And basically, it's based on enrollment, it's based on attendance, and I understand the logic for doing that. And then there's extra money based on the needs of your students, whether or not they come from poor households, whether or not they have learning disabilities and the like. So, very complicated funding formula, but they're asking for something better and more reliable. But the thing I pulled out of this was, I mean, they're basically begging for mercy from their teacher unions.
Who has a teachers unions who have a lot of influence, at least in Sacramento. Bill, does this piece talk about the fact that there's declining enrollment across California high school, or K through 12, and especially
Yeah,
high schools,
yeah,
and across the
yeah.
country? Is that correct?
Well, they focus on California because every
Okay,
state has their own unique
right.
funding formula.
So California enrollment in high schools, by and large, public high schools, is declining. Is that,
Yeah,
yeah,
overall. Now you have
yeah,
pockets where some school districts are growing, not very many of them.
got it. Okay, last couple of quick topics. Federal police won't arrest federal agents under California mask law, city says. That's Mayor Dyer says arresting federal agents could cause dangerous confrontations between armed law enforcement officers. Councilmember Arias pressed city leaders on ICE accountability after deaths in federal custody.
So we have California's mass law. It was to go in effect, I believe, July 1st. It's up in the courts right now. Issues to be decided. I mean, the law as written in California and signed by the governor is legal, will withstand the court tests. I think that Los Angeles Police Chief Jim McDonald and Fresno Mayor Jerry Dyer brought up a valid point here, because you're going to go out and arrest an ICE officer over this or cite them, and somebody loses their cool. You're talking about people with guns. I was surprised they went public, where they said it could trigger armed conflicts. So that tells me they have a genuine concern about this. And of course, the real complication is you have a local cop, citing some federal officer for wearing a mask. That's going to hype up people that are around the situation, whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump. You get people hyped up, things can fall out of control, spiral out of control quickly. So I think this was good common sense. Oh, there's that word again. I'm sorry, that phrase.
Thank you, Bill. But you kind of covered this latest slide as well. LA officials warn masked law enforcement could trigger armed conflicts. Okay, let's see. There's comments, questions. Quiet audience tonight. Anything else, Bill, before we wrap up?
Just my final thought is early results are not good for the Republicans. And as we look ahead to the midterms, when we see the special elections across America, it points to a blue wave. Be on the watch for President Trump doing everything he can to suppress voter turnout. I can imagine we get in a situation in which he's going to send ICE agents to polling centers and the like. Now he's beating the drum for nationalization of elections. It's right in the Constitution. It's right there. It says it's to be decided by the states.
So what does he mean exactly? I just read the headlines. What does he mean?
Well, it's Trump. I don't know what he really means. He talked about Republicans taking over voting.
Okay.
It's Trump. Does he have to make sense?
Okay. So he's not referring to well, I guess that would be presidential ticket. The majority wins. You don't have you abolishing the electoral college. He's talking about something else. No other comments or questions online? I don't have any final comments. There's a lot of stuff up in the air in our country. I just really want more stability, which will lead to more peace here and more justice and peace for folks in the Middle East, Iranians, the folks of Iran, the people of Iran, the 90 million people of Iran that don't want to lose their lives, don't want to lose whatever of their livelihood they have left. They don't want to be bombed to death. They've suffered enough under this regime for over 4 decades. I really hope that there's stability for those folks, and of course the Palestinians in the Middle East who've been under occupation and now in Gaza, by and large obliterated over the last 2 years. Lots of instability in that region, which really doesn't help us or help bring stability to our world. On that somber note, have a great week. Weather is going to be fantastic this weekend in this beautiful Fresno, California, and hope to see all of you next Tuesday night. Good night.